Kellen Trace was not the first man to drift among the neon towers of Solara Prime, and he would not be the last. Yet his story bore the mark of destiny from the very first moment he set foot on its floating platforms. The city, suspended at the nexus of 1,000 trading routes, was both bright and ominous, filled with hissing turbines that carried starship exhaust into the sky, and dark back alleys where dangerous deals were made. Citizens from 100 worlds milled about, their faces marked by worry, excitement, or cunning. Some were exiles, hoping to escape the wrath of distant warlords. Others were entrepreneurs seeking fortunes beyond measure, and some, like Kellen, seemed simply to exist between the cracks, belonging to nowhere and everywhere at once. He had strolled down the polished metal walkway of an upper-tier promenade, glancing with disinterest at the news screens, proclaiming dire announcements of alien fleets beyond the frontier. He cared little for the politics of the Dominion, the murmurings of rebellion from the outer constellations, or the whispered talk of unseen horrors lingering in uncharted space. All he needed was a quiet corner and a chance to close his eyes for a short nap. Sleep. Always sleep. A fleeting respite from the chaos of life. That evening, or what passed for evening in a city that never truly dimmed its lights, Kellen found himself drawn to a narrow sky bridge leading to an old sector, rumored to have belonged once to aristocrats from the House Varel. It was there, quite by chance, that his wandering eyes fell upon a scene more brutal than any that had crossed his path in years, and from that moment, everything changed. The sky bridge had once been a grand thoroughfare, built of gleaming translucent panels that overlooked the swirling mists of the city's underlevels. Age had darkened its floors to a dull green tint, and cracks ran the length of the structure like spiderwebs. The decorative pillars at the entrance were chipped and stained by countless storms that rattled Solara Prime. Kellen paused halfway across, drawn by the flicker of old-fashioned torchlight. This was unusual in a city where electricity hummed in every corridor. Curiosity, mild as it was, urged him forward. He approached the far end of the bridge, stepping lightly, alert as a cat. There, beneath the flickering glow, he saw a gathering of tall, gaunt figures, their skin an ashen blue, their faces adorned with swirling tattoos that glinted in the dim flame. These aliens, he recognized them as the Vrakir, infamous for their obsession with blood rituals, had formed a tight circle. Their guttural chanting rose in harsh, dissonant syllables that set every nerve in Kellen's body on edge. Between them stood a single humanoid figure, robed in tattered finery, her head bowed, a crude device pressed against her wrists, shackles of some alien material. There was a chain leash trailing from the device, held firmly by the largest Vrakir, who wore a hood of black cloth lined with shimmering golden thread. His voice rumbled in a low, resonant chant, the others echoing with fervor. Kellen saw no way around them, and though he loathed trouble, something about this scene seized him, compelled him to stay. He edged closer, carefully, stepping behind a broken column. The robed figure lifted her head, and torchlight fell upon her face. She was young, with dark hair braided in an intricate pattern, though her countenance showed defiance. It also displayed the exhaustion of one who has fought for far too long. And in her eyes, Kellen sensed a fierce determination. There was something regal, almost luminous there, at odds with the chain that bound her. A jolt of recognition flickered in Kellen's memory. He had seen that face before, on a stolen Dominion broadcast that flickered across the black market screens. Princess Nyra viral exiled, disgraced, a daughter of a fallen royal lineage. Some said she was the rightful heir to the Orionic throne, though that had never been proven. Others whispered that she was a fugitive, wanted by the Emperor for treason, regardless of the truth. Her name was rumored throughout the galaxy, and here she stood, cornered by the Vrakir, under the old sky bridge of Solara Prime. A hiss of triumph escaped the largest alien. He was brandishing a ceremonial blade, a jagged metal shape etched with runes that glowed in the dark. The blade's tip hovered near the princess's throat. One of the Vrakir barked a command in their guttural language, and Kellen could guess its meaning: kneel, child of the Dominion, or some iteration of that savage demand. Despite herself, Nyra stiffened, as though refusing to submit. But a powerful blow from the hilt of the blade struck her shoulder, forcing her to stumble. The aliens laughed, a harsh, scraping sound. Kellen felt something stir deep within his chest. Though he often drifted, seldom caring for the fates of others, there were lines even he would not allow to be crossed. He had little love for royalty, but seeing a helpless prisoner forced to kneel for execution woke in him a disquiet that refused to be squelched. He took a step forward, then another. He had no intention of staying silent as a group of bloodthirsty fanatics spilled an innocent's life upon the deck. "Nobody's up for a ritual sacrifice tonight," he drawled, the words leaving his mouth before his brain had fully approved them. "You'd do better to find a temple, or some backwater planet where the Watchers don't see." Several of the Vrakir spun around, their fierce eyes reflecting the torchlight. The largest one, the leader, flashed fanged teeth in anger. This was not the usual way to handle a situation that spelled certain danger. Kellen half expected them to pounce at once. Yet in that moment, a hush fell. The chanting halted. Nyra turned her head slightly, enough to see her would-be rescuer. Surprise flickered in her gaze, as though she couldn't believe that a stranger, unarmed and apparently unconcerned, would intercede on her behalf. The Vrakir leader snarled something that Kellen guessed was a warning. Then, with predatory grace, the creature lunged, blade aimed at his chest. Kellen's arm moved, almost casually. He slipped to one side, pivoted on his heel, and twisted the alien's wrist with a subtle flick. Before the onlookers could blink, the jagged blade clattered to the floor, echoing across the quiet walkway. The leader fell to his knees with a hiss of pain. Nyra's eyes widened, marveling at how effortlessly Kellen disarmed the fanatic. The other Vrakir scrambled, brandishing weapons, rifles, dot clubs, daggers. A twinge of regret formed in Kellen's mind. He had not planned for a full-scale fight, but it was too late now to slink away. Perhaps luck or some deeper instinct guided him. He stooped, snatched the blade from the deck, and spun in a tight arc. The blade hissed through the air, cutting so swiftly that two of the aliens cried out in alarm and jumped backward. Kellen advanced, a lazy grin on his lips, though his eyes glinted with something far more dangerous. "You might consider letting the girl go," he said in a low voice, "unless you've a taste for broken bones." An enraged Vrakir charged from the right, club raised. Kellen evaded, striking the alien's side with the hilt of the blade. A swift blow to the back of its neck sent it sprawling. The next creature fired a shot from its crude pistol, and the bolt sizzled the air near Kellen's cheek. He cursed under his breath. This was no game. He darted forward, weaving from side to side. The alien tried to shoot again, but Kellen was too fast, smashing its wrist and forcing the weapon from its grasp. In one continuous motion, Kellen's foot swept out, kicking the Vrakir's leg out from under it. The alien toppled with a roar of frustration. Princess Nyra, though shackled, had taken advantage of the chaos. She twisted with surprising agility, yanking the chain she was bound to, and jerked the leader off balance. He toppled again, unleashing a guttural string of curses. In less than a minute, half the group was on the ground, nursing wounds, while the others edged away. Kellen stood in the flickering torchlight, chest heaving from exertion, the ceremonial blade in hand. "Next shot might not miss," he said, glancing at the armed aliens. "So unless you're up for a real fight, I suggest you leave while you still can." The Verkeer exchanged glances, their elongated features twisting in a mixture of anger and disbelief. They evidently recognized that this scrawny human, who looked to be half asleep, was far more dangerous than he appeared. One by one, they began retreating, stepping backward from the circle, kneeling to scoop up their fallen comrades. The leader spat a dark oath, but he must have decided it wasn't worth the risk of further confrontation. He yanked the hood over his features, hissed once, then took off at a loping run, the others following in his wake. Kellen didn't move until the last of their footsteps faded into the distance. Only then did he lower the blade. Exhaling a slow breath, he turned to the princess. She was gazing at him with mingled gratitude and suspicion, still chained at her wrists and ankles. The flames of the torches guttered. A swirl of wind from the city's underlevels made her robe flutter. "If you'd kindly free me," she said in a voice that trembled only slightly, "I'd be in your debt." Kellen took a hesitant step. "Sure," he replied. "Though I'm not certain debt is what I'm after." He reached for the shackles, found a small mechanism alien in design, but his nimble fingers soon found the hidden latch. With a dull click, the bond sprang open, sliding off her wrists. Nyra pulled them free and massaged the red abrasions. "They were going to kill me," she said after a moment, her tone heavy. "Well, they sure tried," Kellen responded, his mouth quirking into a half grin, though something thoughtful lingered behind his eyes. "Why were they after you?" Nyra hesitated. If she revealed her identity, it could spell trouble. She had no idea if this stranger recognized her or meant to hand her over to the nearest bounty hunter. But, given the fact he had saved her life, she decided to extend at least a measure of trust. "Because I'm Nyra Varel," she said, her chin lifting slightly in pride, "daughter of the late High Regent, rightful heir of the Orionic throne, among other things." Kellen let out a low whistle, though it lacked genuine surprise. In truth, he had suspected as much. The rumor that a Varel lived in exile on Solara Prime was no secret among those who scoured the back alleys for information. "Okay," he said simply. "I'm Kellen Trace." She waited, as if expecting some grand reaction or the typical obsequious bow. None came. "I suppose you already know who I am." Then, he shrugged. "Rumors. Wanted posters. Yeah, I've heard. They say you're exiled. Don't know if that's strictly true, but I won't pry." Nyra exhaled in relief. Her shoulders sagged slightly, tension easing. Despite the terror she had just faced, she could not help but notice something almost comforting in Kellen's composure. "Thank you," she said, "for saving my life. I can't stay here. Those Verkeer will come back, or they'll summon others." Kellen offered a single nod. "Well, the city's big," he said. "You can find a place to hide." She eyed him warily. "Yes, but not alone." He said nothing, simply stood there, feeling the weight of her gaze. Her bruises and ragged attire highlighted that she was in no condition to traverse the dangerous underbelly of Solara Prime. "I don't want to impose," Nyra continued, "but I can't defend myself properly right now. If you have any sense of honor," he sighed. "I get it. You want a bodyguard." She flushed slightly. "In a sense," she admitted, "but I also want an ally." "An ally," he repeated, a wry note in his voice. "Princess, I think you'd do better with a dozen mercenaries. I'm just one man, and I don't come cheap." Nyra set her jaw, well aware that she carried few resources. Whatever royal riches she once possessed were lost or stolen during her flight from the capital worlds. I have knowledge, she said carefully. Secrets the Dominion's black ops would kill to protect. There's value in that, far beyond credits if you know where to look. Kellen studied her for a long moment. Secrets, he said softly. You're running from them, or running with them. A grim look crossed her face. Both, she replied. Thunder rumbled in the distance, artificial thunder, the result of massive pressure differentials in the city's atmosphere. Kellen looked up. It's going to rain, he observed, referring to the mechanical storms that sometimes wash the city. Better find shelter. Nyra remained silent, uncertain. All right, Kellen said, tugging at his coat. I'm in. For now, let's see what trouble we can avoid. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Though she was frightened, battered, and weary, Nyra felt a spark of hope igniting. Perhaps fate had placed Kellen in her path. Perhaps this was the turning point she so desperately needed. They found refuge in a small, rundown tavern near the underlevels, its neon sign flickering in half-burnt letters that spelled the Nebula Rose. The place smelled of stale liquor and overheated circuit boards. Patrons were scattered about, many with hollow eyes and hunched shoulders, the sort who vanished into corners and avoided the notice of authorities. Kellen guided Nyra to a vacant booth in the back. She sank onto the cracked bench, wincing at the pain in her bruised arms. He took a seat across from her, casually leaning back. A suspicious-eyed bartender ambled over, his mechanical left arm whirring softly. He gave them a cursory glance, then tapped a small screen by their table, waiting for the order. 2 synthas, Kellen said, referring to the cheap synthetic brew that was standard fare in such establishments. The bartender's brow crinkled. He pressed a button on the screen and trundled off. Nyra sighed, rubbing her wrists again. You're being kind, she remarked softly. Kellen shrugged. Guess one am, he said, though I'm not used to princesses calling me that. A short, strained laugh escaped her lips. I'm not much of a princess these days, she murmured. I've been stripped of titles and exiled to the edges of known space. If you're worried about some golden reward from me, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. He folded his arms. Not in it, for the gold. Maybe I'm just curious. The drinks arrived, 2 cloudy glasses with a faintly bitter aroma. Kellen sipped his, wincing at the taste. Nyra stared at hers, swirling the liquid. You mind explaining why the Vrakir wanted to kill you? He asked, leaning in so that his quiet voice was not overheard by other patrons. Nyra's expression grew guarded. You must know they deal in dark magics, forbidden rites that feed off sentient energies. To them, I am a symbol of the old dominion they despise, an offering to their cruel gods. Kellen nodded. That's the obvious reason. But they don't usually perform a public sacrifice unless there's something special about the victim. So I'm guessing you have something they really want to bury. Right. Nyra's eyes flickered. I suspect so, she admitted. I discovered a star chart, older than the Dominion itself, hidden in my father's archives. It points to a system beyond charted space. From what I've pieced together, the Vrakir once had an empire there, devoted to some monstrous entity they worship. I suspect that in that system lies the secret to their resurgence, perhaps a superweapon, or a living horror. I'm not entirely sure. Kellen's brow furrowed. And you plan to stop them. She gave him a resolute nod. If the Vrakir awaken whatever sleeps in that star system, it could plunge the galaxy into chaos. The Dominion's standing might crumble, and a civil war could tear every coalition world apart. And you think you're the only one who can stop them? Kellen asked softly. Nyra hesitated, her fingers tight around the glass. I might not be the only one, she said, but I'm the only one with enough knowledge to even try. My father's archives were not meant for the eyes of lesser nobles or the Emperor's council. They revealed that the House Varel once had a pact with ancient guardians, watchers who sealed away the entity worshipped by the Vrakir. It's all tangled in secrets and myth. But I think there may be a key and artifact known as the Starbreaker Scepter that can keep that abomination locked away. Kellen looked at her for a long moment, an odd, penetrating look. So, you want to find the scepter, he said. Nyra set her jaw. Yes, she admitted, and with it, ensure that the Vrakir can't resurrect their monstrous god. Doing so might also restore my family's honor and, just maybe, end the decades of war that plagued the frontier. Kellen took a slow sip, pondering, for a man who preferred anonymity, who craved only a quiet corner to sleep. This was quite the departure from his usual path. Well, he said quietly, I did just rescue you from a nasty fate. I guess I can't back out now. Besides, I'd hate to see half the galaxy overrun by fanatics. NYRA's eyes shone with faint gratitude. Thank you, she said simply. We don't have much time, though. The Vrakir won't stop hunting me. Not while I'm alive and holding the knowledge that threatens them. Others, too, the Emperor's secret agents, would rather see me silenced. Kellen set his glass down, letting the synth swirl. We should find somewhere safer. Then we can figure out a plan. She nodded in agreement, her expression tightening. The city outside the grimy window was relentless lights, hovercraft, towers that loomed overhead like silent sentinels. But hidden in that mass of structures were 1,000 dangers and perhaps a few fleeting allies. They slipped away from the nebula rose before dawn, though Solara Prime's perpetual glow made it difficult to discern true morning. Kellen led NYRA through twisting corridors, riding half-functional elevators, and ducking across busy thoroughfares. He had a knack for avoiding the main squares, where security patrols roamed, and for sticking to the labyrinthine network of catwalks above the standard footpaths. Once or twice, they spotted robed figures perched atop scaffolding in the distance for Vrakir scouts, or possibly watchers from other factions. Each time, Kellen ushered Nyra into hiding until the threat passed. At last, they arrived at a cramped dwelling near the lower sectors. Kellen keyed in a code on a dented steel door. It slid open with a jarring hiss, revealing a small chamber lit by a single overhead bulb. The space was cluttered old crates, half-repaired mechanical parts, an ancient star chart pinned to one wall, and a ragged cot in the corner. This was evidently Kellen's personal hideout, though its disorganized state suggested he rarely used it for anything but short rests. Nyra stepped inside, wrinkling her nose at the musty smell. It's functional, she offered politely. More or less, Kellen replied with a smirk, tossing his coat onto a nearby crate. You can take the cot, I'll manage. She began to protest, but he waved a dismissive hand, heading to a pile of old blankets on the floor. I'm used to making do, he said. You look like you haven't slept in weeks. Tension and exhaustion warred in her posture, but at last, she conceded. She sank onto the cot, resting her head against the thin pillow. Thank you, she whispered. Kellen settled onto the floor and closed his eyes, letting the hush of the enclosed space envelop him. For a moment, no words passed between them. Outside, the hum of distant engines and the occasional call of hawkers peddling wares drifted through the cracks in the walls. Though he tried to rest, Kellen found his thoughts drifting. He could not shake the sense of something vast looming behind the scenes. Nyra's revelations, the threat of the Vrakir god, the old alliances that might yet come into play. And beyond that, there was a flicker of something in his own memories, something he had almost forgotten from years ago. He forced the memory away, burying it beneath the layers of pragmatic caution that had kept him alive. Yet as Nyra's breathing steadied, her face softening in sleep, Kellen allowed himself a small, rueful smile. Perhaps fate had indeed chosen him for a reason, to stand beside this exiled princess. Or perhaps it was chance, a single moment that set him on a collision course with destiny. Either way, there was no turning back now. Nyra woke to the hiss of the door sliding open. She shot upright, her heart hammering, fearing the Verkeer had found them. Instead, she saw Kellen stepping inside, carrying a small bag of supplies. A faint relief coursed through her veins. Couldn't sleep, he explained curtly. Placing the bag on a crate, went out to scavenge a bit, brought food. She rubbed her eyes, trying to clear her head. He tossed her a foil-wrapped bundle, which turned out to contain a few squares of protein ration and a small, sealed container of filtered water. It wasn't a feast, but Nyra's stomach growled in gratitude as she ate. Kellen rummaged through the piles of salvage along the walls until he found what he was looking for, a battered handheld device with a flickering screen. He fiddled with the knobs, coaxing it to life. A faint glow appeared, revealing lines of code and a scrambled data feed. "This is a short-range comm device," he explained. "I've used it in the past to pick up local transmissions from the city. We might glean some intel about recent movements, like if the Vrakir are hunting us, or if the Dominion's agents are nearby." Nyra nodded. "Is it secure?" "Relatively. I've got a few built-in jammers to mask our signal. They're not foolproof, but it'll do." He tapped at the keys, scanning the frequencies. Static hissed, punctuated by fragments of voices. Royal X. Further sightings. Armed conflict. Gathering near Quadrant 4. Suspicious robed group. Princess rumored to be in the old city. Bounty doubled. Kellen grimaced. "Word travels fast," he said. Nyra swallowed her last bite, her face tense. "We should leave Solara Prime. It's too dangerous," he considered. "Might be right. But you mentioned the star chart. Do you have it with you?" She shook her head. "Not physically. I memorized it. The original was destroyed after I fled, to keep it from falling into the wrong hands." He arched an eyebrow. "You have the entire star chart memorized." A faint smile touched her lips. "My father required all royal heirs to hone certain mental disciplines. Photographic memory was among them." Kellen let out a low whistle, genuinely impressed. "Well, that's handy. So you can guide us to wherever the scepter is." Nyra set the empty water container aside. "Yes, at least to the system it's rumored to reside in. But we'll need a ship, resources, and a crew we can trust." "Trust is hard to come by," he said under his breath. Then, louder, "I might know someone who runs a small transport out of the lower docks. She doesn't ask too many questions. If you can pay." "The problem is, money." Nyra's expression fell. "I have little in the way of credits," she confessed. Kellen was silent for a moment, thinking. "Then we find another way. A job, a quick hustle, something to earn the fare. Unless you have ties to wealthy sympathizers in the city." Nyra gave a soft, humorless laugh. "I doubt it. Many in the old aristocracy turned their backs on me once the emperor declared me a traitor. If I showed my face to them, they'd likely collect the bounty themselves." A frown crossed Kellen's features. "All right, then," he said. "We'll do a job. Something that pays enough to get us off this rock quickly. But we have to be careful. The more we appear in public, the more likely we'll draw attention." Nyra nodded, her eyes bright with renewed determination. "Whatever it takes," she said softly. They agreed to keep a low profile while searching for under-the-table work. Kellen guided Nyra to a place known as the Rusted Spiral, a dingy establishment deeper in the city's underlevels. It was rumored that fixers and smugglers gathered there to exchange leads on illicit jobs. far from the prying eyes of official authorities. They arrived in the midst of a smoky haze that clung to the low ceiling. Dim lights flickered behind protective grates, casting dancing shadows on the worn metal floor. The patrons were a mix of humans, reptilian Drath, and a smattering of androids who seemed more advanced than typical labor bots. All eyes flicked to Kellen and Nyra as they entered, then slid away, feigning indifference. Kellen spotted a tall, lanky man leaning against the bar, a cybernetic implant pulsing at his temple. He beckoned them closer. "You looking for something, friend?" the man drawled, his accent thick with some unknown origin. "Depends," Kellen replied. "Heard you might have connections to a job that pays well." No questions asked. The man's gaze swept over Nyra, pausing for half a heartbeat. If he recognized her, he gave no sign. "Could be," he said. "My name's Calder. I know a few people in need of certain, specialized services. What's your skill set?" Kellen gave a lazy shrug. "A bit of infiltration, some muscle. We can handle ourselves." Calder tapped his chin, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. "I do know a client who needs a small team to retrieve a valuable item, stolen property, from what I hear. But the location is guarded by a local gang. Payments decent 2,000 credits, half up front, half on delivery." Nyra's eyes flicked to Kellen, who pursed his lips. "We'll take it," he said. Calder nodded slowly. "All right then, come with me. We'll talk details somewhere more private." He led them to a back room, which turned out to be a storage area for the bar's surplus supplies, crates of cheap liquor, boxes of ration packs, and a pervasive smell of mildew. Calder cleared a space on a makeshift table, then produced a battered data slate from his jacket pocket. He activated it, revealing a rough map of part of the underlevels. "Here's the deal," Calder said, his voice lowered. "Client's name is unknown, but they're shelling out good credits for a small container that's being held by the Brass Snakes gang in their hideout." He tapped a point on the map. "This is the place, a repurposed water processing station, near Sector 73B. The gang is well armed, so you'll need to be careful." Kellen studied the map, memorizing the layout. "We need to get in, find the container, and get out, then deliver it to you." "That's right," Calder said. "Once I confirm it's legit, I'll pay out 2,000. That should buy you passage off this floating tomb, if that's what you're after." Nyra felt her pulse quicken. It was risky, but they had little choice. "Deal," Kellen said simply. Calder tapped at his data slate, sending the relevant files to Kellen's handheld device. "One condition," the broker added. "No unnecessary casualties. The client wants this discreet." Kellen nodded. He and Nyra turned to leave, but Calder stopped them with a hand on Kellen's arm, eyeing Nyra for a moment. "She looks familiar," he mused. "You sure you want to bring her along?" Kellen let his gaze rest on Calder's hand. He said nothing, but a subtle tension in his stance spoke volumes. Calder got the message and withdrew. "She'll be fine," Kellen said flatly, leaving no room for argument. Calder shrugged. "Suit yourself. Just remember, no mistakes." And with that, the deal was sealed. Night in Solera Prime was a relative term. The city's synthetic day cycle dimmed the overhead lights slightly, but neon signs still burned, and the hum of traffic never ceased. Kellen and Nyra navigated the warren of corridors leading to Sector 73B, an area known for its lawlessness and frequent power surges that left entire blocks in darkness. They avoided main passages, slipping through side alleys lined with broken ventilation shafts. Occasional jets of steam hissed from overhead pipes. Rats or their alien equivalents scurried in the shadows. Before long, they reached the perimeter of the Brass Snakes' territory. marked by graffiti of a coiled serpent painted in a lurid green. The air smelled of oil and rancid refuse. Kellen motioned for Nyra to press against the wall of a half-collapsed tower. From there, they could observe the old water processing station now, fortified with scrap metal and barbed wire. A pair of guards stood at the entrance, lazily cradling their rifles. "How do we slip past them?" Nyra whispered, leaning close. Kellen considered. "We could try a direct approach, but the less noise the better," he replied. "Let's circle around. See if there's a secondary access." They edged around the perimeter, keeping low. A few minutes later, they spotted a small hatch set into the building's side, likely a maintenance entrance. It had a single guard, an older man wearing the brass snake's insignia on a battered vest. "Stay here," Kellen murmured to Nyra, his eyes glinting with a hint of confidence. She opened her mouth to protest, but he was already moving. Kellen approached from behind, silent as a drifting ghost. The guard never heard him. With a swift motion, Kellen struck the guard's neck, a precise blow that robbed him of consciousness without a sound. The guard collapsed, and Kellen gently lowered him to the floor. Nyra crept over, her heart pounding. "That was smooth," she whispered, eyeing Kellen with guarded appreciation. He shrugged. "Let's go." They slipped through the maintenance hatch. Inside was a narrow corridor lit by flickering overhead lights. The walls were damp, covered in patches of moss or algae that thrived in the station's moist environment. The distant hum of pumps reverberated through the structure. Kellen led the way, pausing at intervals to listen for approaching footsteps. Now and then, they heard voices echo through the corridors, members of the brass snakes going about their business. At last, they reached a central chamber where massive pipes converged, presumably once used for water purification. The place had been converted into a makeshift storage depot. Crates and containers were stacked haphazardly, many bearing the emblem of stolen cargo. Nyra scanned the area, her heart rate climbing. Somewhere here was the item they needed. She didn't even know what it was, only that it would secure the payment to fund their escape. She and Kellen crept among the crates, pausing whenever they heard voices. At one point, they slipped behind a large metal box just as a pair of gang members wandered by, discussing the lack of respect from the new boss. Nyra held her breath, praying they wouldn't notice. Eventually, the pair moved on. Kellen examined the labels on the crates, searching for the code Calder had provided. After several tense minutes, he found it, a small, battered container marked with a single red stripe. "This must be it," he whispered, glancing around. "Let's get it and go." Nyra carefully pulled the container from the stack, mindful not to knock anything over. The box was surprisingly heavy for its modest size. She felt something inside shift with a dull clink. Curiosity gnawed at her, but she resisted the urge to open it. They started back the way they had come, weaving among crates, making for the corridor that led to the maintenance hatch. But just as they neared the exit, a voice rang out, "Hey, you there, stop." A young gang member, possibly no older than 18, stood in their path, a pistol trembling in his hand. His eyes flicked to the container in Nyra's grasp. "Put it down," he ordered, trying to sound authoritative, though fear lurked in his gaze. Kellen moved slowly, raising his hands. "We're just passing through," he said with a disarming calm. The boy's jaw tightened. "Stealing from the brass snakes. That's a death sentence." From somewhere deeper in the station, a shout echoed, no doubt the other gang members, alerted to the intrusion. Time was running short. Nyra's pulse pounded in her ears. She could see the boy's finger tightening on the trigger. He was nervous, on edge, likely to fire any second. She wondered if they could disarm him before reinforcements arrived. Kellen inched forward, his voice low. Take it easy, kid. The boy swallowed hard. Shut up, he warned, glancing over his shoulder. In that split second, Kellen acted. A blur of motion, he stepped forward, grabbed the boy's wrist, and twisted with enough force to dislodge the pistol. It clattered to the floor. The boy yelped, stumbling. Nyra lunged for the gun, kicking it away before he could recover. She expected Kellen to knock the boy out, but instead, he just pinned him against the wall. Don't, Kellen said quietly. You don't want to die over a job like this. The boy glared at him, tears of frustration welling in his eyes. You don't understand. The boss will kill me for letting you take that. Kellen's gaze flickered with pity. Then, come with us, he offered, or run away from here. We won't stop you. For an instant, the boy looked as though he might consider it. Then a door slammed open at the far side of the chamber, and half a dozen armed gang members spilled in, weapons raised. Move! Kellen barked at Nyra. They sprinted down the corridor, the boy's voice trailing after them. They're here, get them! Blaster fire scorched the air, striking the walls in bursts of sparks. Nyra clutched the container to her chest, adrenaline surging. Kellen led the way, ducking behind a large pipe for cover. Another barrage of shots crackled overhead. A side passage opened to their right, leading deeper into the station. Kellen risked a glance, no immediate pursuers that way. He motioned for Nyra to follow. They darted down the corridor, the walls shaking with each step. The labyrinth of maintenance tunnels twisted in every direction, forcing them to guess at each intersection. At last, they spotted an opening high on the left, a vent shaft large enough to crawl through. Without hesitation, Kellen hoisted Nyra up. She dragged herself inside, pulling the container with her. Then he followed, wincing at the cramped space. They inched forward on hands and knees, the metallic interior echoing with each movement. Below them, the gang's shouts grew louder, footsteps reverberating. Nyra's breath hitched. The vent was dark, stifling. She could barely see in front of her. "Which way?" she whispered, her voice trembling with the enclosed tension. Kellen shone a small wrist light, revealing a narrow passage that branched in two directions. He chose the left path, leading them deeper into the structure. For several minutes, they crawled in near silence, only the dull clang of metal beneath them. Then, in the faint glow, they glimpsed another grate ahead, leading outside. They reached it. Kellen carefully tested the grate's edges corroded, but not locked. With a faint groan of protest, it popped loose. Fresh air rushed in, carrying the sense of the Undercity. He peered out. The drop was roughly 8 feet to a narrow ledge, which overlooked a filthy canal. The sector was dimly lit by overhead lamps. No sign of them, Kellen whispered, relief tinging his voice. We might be in the clear. Nyra passed the container through the opening to him, then lowered herself. Dangling before dropping to the ledge, she landed unsteadily, her ankles protesting the impact. Kellen followed, landing with more grace. A moment of tense silence. No one shouted. No alarm blared. They had escaped the station with the container. Nyra exhaled shakily, hugging the box against her chest. That was close. Kellen nodded, scanning the shadows. We need to deliver this fast, he said. The brass snakes will put out word. We can't stay here long. They crept away from the station, returning through back alleys, twice. They had to hide from roving patrols, wearing the brass snake's insignia. But at last, they managed to circle back to the rusted spiral's rear entrance without incident. Inside, they found Calder waiting in the same back room. He greeted them with a slow nod, eyes flicking to the container. You got it, he said, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. Kellen placed the box on the table, stepping back. It wasn't easy, he remarked, raising an eyebrow. Calder snorted. If it were easy, I would have done it myself. He leaned forward, tapping at the container's lock mechanism. Nyra braced herself, half expecting some dangerous reaction, but it simply clicked open. She caught a glimpse of the contents, a luminous crystal sphere, about the size of a clenched fist, glowing with a faint blue radiance. It was beautiful and strangely mesmerizing. She felt an almost gravitational pull, as if it resonated with some hidden aspect of her mind. Calder examined it carefully, then nodded. Good. This is what the client wanted. He sealed the box and handed it off to a grizzled android that appeared from behind the crates. Nyra couldn't help but ask, "What is that crystal?" Calder shrugged, feigning ignorance. "I didn't ask," he said. "The less you know, the better, right?" Kellen said nothing, though he shared a brief, concerned glance with Nyra. "Your payment," Calder announced, transferring credits to a small handheld device that Kellen produced from his pocket. The amount flashed on the screen, 2.00 credits, just as promised. "Pleasure doing business," Calder said, stowing his data slate. "If you need more work, you know where to find me, assuming you survive your future endeavors." Kellen nodded, pocketing the device. Without another word, he and Nyra left the room. They wasted no time. After departing the rusted spiral, Kellen led Nyra to the lower docks, a sprawling complex of platforms suspended over a vast mechanical chasm. There, ships of every make and model lined the berths, sleek private yachts, battered freighters, and everything in between. At one of the far docks stood a small corvette named the Raven's Grace. Its hull was scuffed and dented, evidence of many close calls, but the engine thrummed with latent power. Kellen halted near the boarding ramp, glancing around. "Her name is Captain Tarlia Quinn," he said to Nyra. "She's not the friendliest sort, but if the credits are good, she won't ask questions." Nyra eyed the corvette with apprehension. "Do we have enough to hire her?" He shrugged. "We'll find out." They approached the corvette. A tall woman with braided silver hair was inspecting the hull plating, occasionally muttering curses under her breath. She wore a flight jacket emblazoned with patches from various star systems. At the sound of footsteps, she turned, her expression guarded. "Tarlia," Kellen greeted. She squinted. "Kellen Trace. I thought you drifted off to some far corner of the galaxy. What brings you here?" "I need passage off-world," he said simply, "and I can pay." Tarlia's gaze shifted to Nyra, lingering for a moment, as if trying to place her face. Then she nodded slowly. "Payment up front." Kellen held up the handheld device, transferring a portion of the 2.00 credits. Tarlia checked her own device, then pursed her lips. "All right," she conceded. "That'll get you to the next system without a fuss. But if you want to go any further, it'll cost extra." Nyra started to protest, but Kellen shot her a warning glance. "One step at a time," he murmured. Tarlia beckoned them aboard. The corvette's interior was cramped, filled with exposed wiring and the constant hum of life support. A narrow corridor led to a small common area with a circular table bolted to the floor. They settled there, and Tarlia wasted no time taking the pilot's seat at the cockpit just beyond. Kellen and Nyra strapped themselves in for takeoff. Within minutes, the Raven's Grace lifted from the dock with a rumble, soared through the city's layered atmosphere, and broke free into the starry expanse above Solara Prime. Nyra felt a rush of relief as she gazed out the viewport, watching the neon sprawl dwindle below. She allowed herself a moment to relax, though the tension of their next moves still weighed heavily. They had a partial victory escape from the city, but the real journey was only beginning. Kellen unbuckled his harness and joined her near the viewport. His expression was pensive. "What's our next move?" Nyra asked quietly. He took a breath. "We need to chart a course to that star system you mentioned," he said. "But you'll have to guide us, since you have the coordinates in your head." She nodded. "The system is known in old records as Marados. Some accounts refer to it as the cradle of a lost empire, others as a cursed region. The Dominion's modern star charts label it uninhabitable, but that may be disinformation." Kellen ran a hand through his hair. "We'll see if Tarly is willing to take us that far. If not, we'll find another ship once we're out of Dominion territory. Also, we should watch our backs. If word gets out about where we're heading, we'll have more than just the Vrakir to worry about." Nyra touched his arm lightly. "I appreciate what you've done," she said. "No one asked you to save me or to help me escape." He offered a half smile. "I'm not sure why I did either," he admitted. "Maybe I just couldn't walk away this time." A silence passed between them, charged with unspoken emotions and the weight of the looming quest. Beyond the viewport, stars glittered in the void. Then Tarlia's voice crackled through the Corvette's intercom. "Buckle up again. We're making a jump to Lightfold. If you two have any sense, you'll shut your eyes and pray we don't get ambushed by the Dominion patrol." Kellen and NYRA exchanged a glance, then complied. The Raven's Grace shuddered as its engine cycled, building up the energy required for faster-than-light travel. The distant stars elongated into streaks of light, and with a final jolt, they were gone from the Solara Prime system, plunging into the vast unknown. The journey through Lightfold was relatively brief, a mere hour in subjective time, before Tarlia dropped them back into normal space near a bustling trade hub called Selvier Station. It was a mid-sized orbital station, known for connecting various outer systems to the Dominion's border. As soon as they docked, Tarlia turned to Kellen and NYRA, arms folded. "This is as far as your current payment takes you," she said in a clipped tone. "If you need me to go further, you'd better have more credits." NYRA swallowed. "We have some left, but not enough for a long journey." Tarlia shrugged. "Then you can disembark here, or find more funds. I've got cargo to haul, paying clients waiting. Make your choice fast." Kellen's gaze flicked to NYRA. "What do you think?" She hesitated, recalling that Marados was well beyond Selvier Station. Travel that far would be costly. "We should try to find another ship," she said at last. "Perhaps one more willing to negotiate." Kellen nodded. Though he didn't look thrilled about scouring another station for a ride, Tarlia opened the hatch, letting them out onto one of Selvier Station's many docking arms. Before leaving, Kellen asked Tarlia quietly, "You ever hear of Marados?" She pursed her lips, a flicker of interest in her expression. "Heard rumors. Old sector. Mostly blacked out on official maps. Some say the Vrakir roam near there." "Why? You headed there?" He shrugged noncommittally. "Just curious." Tarlia eyed him for a moment, then let out a dry laugh. "Watch yourself," she said. "Lot of folks want to see that place stay buried." And with that, the hatch sealed behind them, leaving Kellen and NYRA on the docking platform, the hum of station life thrumming through the walls. Selvier Station was a hive of activity. Vendors hawked everything from rare alien pets to counterfeit technology. Bounty hunters scowled from the corners, scanning crowds for familiar faces. Freighters came and went, hauling goods to the frontier worlds. Nyra kept her hood drawn low, mindful that her presence might attract attention. Kellen walked beside her, hands in his pockets, scanning the passers-by with practiced vigilance. They made their way to a drab corridor leading to the station's administrative offices, hoping to find flight listings or a place where independent captains posted their services. A flickering holographic sign overhead read Transit Bulletin. Several large screens dominated the far wall, each listing vessels seeking passengers or cargo. The fees were astronomical, especially for journeys beyond the well-trafficked routes. Nyra's heart sank at the numbers. 2,000 credits might have been enough for Tarlia's short hop, but not for a full expedition to the unknown reaches. "Looks like we're out of luck," she murmured, scanning the listings. Kellen scratched his chin. "There might be alternative ways," he said. "Not everyone advertises openly. We can check the local cantinas, see if any captains are up for a riskier job." They were about to leave when Nyra felt a hand on her shoulder. She spun around, alarmed, to see a short, stocky man with mechanical goggles perched on his forehead. He wore the uniform of a station worker, though the stains on his sleeves suggested a mechanic's trade. "You two look lost," he said. "I can help. For a price." NYRA pulled away, suspicious. "We're not lost," the man chuckled. "Sure you're not. Listen, I have a cousin who's an independent pilot. Name's Rakir. If you need to go somewhere off the main charts, he might be your guy, but he doesn't come cheap." Kellen studied the man, wary. "We can handle ourselves. Where do we find this Rakir?" The mechanic's eyes gleamed, sensing a potential profit. "Bay 9. If you hurry, you might catch him before he leaves." A sly grin crossed Kellen's face. "Right. Thanks." Without further comment, he tugged Nyra's sleeve, and they headed down the corridor. Bay 9 was a cramped docking alcove at the station's perimeter. There, they found a small freighter with broad wings, the paint peeling from its hull. A man in a worn flight suit was loading crates onto a hover pallet, assisted by a lanky young woman with a data pad in hand. The man's beard was streaked with gray, and his posture suggested a lifetime of hauling contraband. "Check the manifest," he barked to the young woman, then turned his attention to Kellen and NYRA. "You need something. Are you Rakir?" Kellen asked, stepping closer. "Who wants to know?" "Name's Kellen. I hear you take freelance runs to lesser-known locations." Rakir eyed them with a skeptical glare. "Maybe I do. Why?" Nyra tilted her hood back slightly, meeting his gaze. "We want to go beyond Dominion space, to a system off the usual charts. We can pay, at least in part, but we may need to negotiate." Rakir's brow furrowed. "You want charity. You're in the wrong business. My ship doesn't fly on hopes and dreams." Kellen sighed. "We can give you 500 credits now, and an IOU for more once we secure additional resources. Or we can offer information a potential trade route or salvage claim you can cash in." A slow, sardonic grin spread across Rakir's face. "Information. And what sort of claim might that be?" NYRA tried to project confidence. "An undiscovered ruin in the Mirados system, possibly containing valuable relics." Rakir's grin vanished, replaced by a scowl. "Mirados? Are you insane? That region is rumored to be crawling with Vrakir fanatics. I've heard horror stories, missing ships, no survivors." Kellen raised an eyebrow. "So you have heard of it?" Rakir glanced at his young assistant, who shrugged helplessly. "We've heard the name. Sure. Doesn't mean we'd go there." Nyra's gaze hardened. "We're prepared to pay," she said. "And if we succeed in our quest, we can offer you exclusive salvage rights to anything we find," he considered, his expression warring between greed and caution. "It's a big risk," he growled, "but maybe. Let me think about it." Kellen folded his arms. "We don't have much time. If you're not in, we'll find someone else." Rakir studied them, sizing them up. "All right, show me the 500. Nyra glanced at Kellen, who tapped on his handheld device, transferring the funds. Rakir checked his own device, nodded, then jerked a thumb at the crates. "We'll load up and leave within the hour, but I want half your salvage claim in writing, sealed by a recorded contract." My assistant here, Adeline, will draw it up. Kellen shrugged. Deal. Nyra felt a surge of relief, though a sliver of fear still gnawed at her. Venturing to Marados was no small matter, but at least they now had a ship and a path forward. While Adeline drafted the agreement, Rikir asked casually, "What do you hope to find out there?" Anyway, Nyra tensed, unsure how much to reveal. Kellen answered cryptically, "Something ancient, possibly dangerous. We're hoping to prevent worse trouble." Rikir snorted. "You better hope you know what you're doing." The freighter, christened the Wayward Falcon, left Selvier Station that same cycle. It was a cramped vessel, lacking the more comfortable fittings of Tarlia's corvette. The cargo hold reeked of engine fumes, and the sleeping quarters were little more than bunks bolted to the walls. Still, Nyra felt an odd sense of excitement as the ship rumbled through the darkness, heading for the coordinates she provided. The jump to Lightfall was longer this time, necessitating multiple mini-jumps through intermediate systems. Each time they emerged, they had to recalculate routes, ensuring they stayed off the major Dominion radar. Days blurred into a routine of sleep, minimal meals, and tension-filled conversations. Rikir remained gruff but cordial, while Adeline grew mildly curious about the nature of their mission. Kellen kept watch, occasionally entertaining Nyra with wry commentary on the ship's questionable safety. The deeper they ventured into the frontier, the sparser the star maps became. By the time they were within a single jump of Marados, the nav computer displayed a near-blank screen. Adeline stared at it, chewing her lip. "This is insane," she muttered. "There's nothing here, no recognized warp routes, no beacons. We're flying blind." Rikir tapped at the console, a muscle twitching in his jaw. "One more jump," he announced. "But I'm telling you both, if we see any sign of trouble, we're turning around." Kellen and Nyra exchanged glances. "Understood," she said softly. They made the final jump. For a moment, the swirling lights of hyperspace enveloped the vessel, disorienting in their otherworldly radiance. Then, with a jolt, the Wayward Falcon re-entered real space. Nyra pressed her face to the viewport, heart pounding. They were greeted by the pale glow of a distant star, dimmer than Solera's brilliance, casting eerie shadows across the ship's hull. "This must be it," she whispered, scanning the sensor readings. Marados. The console beeped, displaying a cluster of planets orbiting that ancient star. Two of them were gas giants, with swirling storms visible from space. Another was a barren rock, lifeless by all indications. But one world, the fourth planet, showed faint readings of an atmosphere. "There," Nyra said, pointing. "That's where we need to go." Adeline's eyes widened at the sensor anomalies. "There's unusual energy signatures. Can't tell if they're natural or artificial." Rikir stared at the readouts, tension etched into his features. "This place feels dead," he muttered. "Are you sure about this?" Nyra nodded, though fear fluttered in her stomach. Kellen placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "All right," he said. "Let's see if we can find a stable orbit and scan for a landing site." With caution, Rikir piloted the Wayward Falcon closer to the planet. Clouds veiled parts of the surface, but occasional breaks revealed jagged mountain ranges and wide plains. The sensors struggled to penetrate the atmosphere, hampered by static interference. "That's not good," Adeline noted, tapping the console. "Something's blocking our signals." Kellen frowned. Could be a natural phenomenon or not. Rikir grimaced, steeling himself. "Hold on tight. We're going in." The ship shuddered as it descended, buffeted by powerful crosswinds. The hull creaked ominously, and the temperature readings fluctuated wildly. For a moment, Nyra feared they would crash, but Rikir wrestled with the controls. guiding them through the turbulence until they broke beneath the clouds. A stark landscape spread below, rugged terrain, dotted with craters and canyons. A faint glow lingered on the horizon, as though from geothermal vents or something more arcane. There, Nyra gasped, pointing to a plateau that seemed relatively flat. We can land there. Rekir managed to set the freighter down on the rocky ground, dust and debris swirling in the wake of the engines. Once the landing struts engaged, the ship settled with a loud groan. Silence descended, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal. NYRA glanced at Kellen. "We made it." He nodded, though worry lines creased his brow. "What now?" She exhaled, steadying herself. "We search for the hidden temple where the Starbreaker scepter is said to be." Rekir overheard, scowling. "Temple? Of course there's a temple," he grunted sarcastically. "Be careful. We'll stay on board. Keep the engines warm in case we need a quick escape." Kellen raised an eyebrow at NYRA. "Shall we?" She braced herself, gathering the courage that had brought her all this way. "Let's go." Outside, the air was thin, but breathable, with a faint metallic taste. Kellen and Nyra wore light rebreathers to help filter any harmful particles. The landscape stretched bleak and unwelcoming, jagged rocks jutting like broken teeth. Occasional gusts of wind stirred dust devils. They trudged forward, guided by Nyra's memory of the star chart and the cryptic notes from her father's archive. She could almost hear her heartbeat echoing in her ears. Every so often, they paused to consult a small handheld sensor, though it offered minimal data due to the interference. Still, Nyra pressed on, a growing certainty leading her toward the horizon. In the distance, they glimpsed a structure nestled against a towering cliff, a faint silhouette of spires and arches. As they drew closer, more details emerged. Massive stones carved with alien glyphs, half buried in drifting sands. "This must be it," Nyra breathed. The ancient site. Kellen said nothing, but his eyes roved warily over the ruins, as though expecting an ambush. They descended into what looked like a courtyard, partially collapsed over the ages. Tall columns, once majestic, lay shattered on the ground. Strange murals decorated the remaining walls, depicting humanoid figures in elaborate robes, confronting a serpentine beast with multiple heads. Nyra felt a chill run up her spine, recalling the Vrakir's monstrous god. At one side of the courtyard stood a large archway leading into darkness. A rune above it glowed faintly, as if reacting to their presence. "We go in," Nyra said softly, stepping forward. Kellen followed, drawing a small flashlight to illuminate the passage. The walls bore inscriptions in a script neither of them recognized, though some symbols resembled Dominion runes. Others were more akin to Vrakir lettering. Down they went, the corridor sloping gently. The air grew stale, heavy with an ancient presence that pressed on Nyra's mind. She noticed Kellen seemed uneasy, his usual lazy confidence replaced by cautious concentration. At length, they reached a wide chamber. Statues stood along the perimeter, draped in cobwebs and dust. At the center was a raised dais, upon which stood a stone pedestal. Something gleamed atop it, a metallic rod shaped like a short staff. Nyra's breath caught. "That must be the Starbreaker scepter," she whispered, voice echoing. She moved closer, heart thudding. The scepter was about 2 feet in length, carved with swirling lines that pulsed faintly, as though lit from within by a gentle luminescence. A large crystal was set into its tip, reminiscent of starlight trapped in stone. Kellen ran a hand along the pedestal, wiping away centuries of grime. "Guess we found it," he murmured. Nyra reached out, hesitating an inch from the scepter. "Do you sense that?" she asked softly, glancing at Kellen. He nodded slowly. Feels alive. With trembling fingers, Nyra lifted the scepter. Its weight surprised her. It was lighter than it appeared. At once, a surge of warmth coursed through her arm, a spark of power flickering at the edge of her consciousness. She gasped, nearly dropping it. Kellen steadied her. "Careful," he said. She exhaled, regaining composure. "This is it," she affirmed. The Starbreaker Scepter, the key to stopping the Vrakir's god from awakening. A rumble resonated through the chamber. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and a low moan echoed off the walls. Nyra's eyes flew wide. What was that? Kellen's expression hardened. We might have triggered something. Suddenly, a door on the far side of the chamber slid open, revealing a group of tall figures with ashen blue skin, clad in dark robes. The Vrakir. At their forefront stood the very leader who had nearly sacrificed Nyra in Solara Prime, his golden thread hood marking his status. "You dare defile our sacred temple," he thundered, voice echoing in the ancient hall. "Hand over the scepter, or your lives end here." Nyra's pulse raced. She clutched the Starbreaker scepter protectively. Kellen stepped forward, his posture tense. "We're not handing over anything," he said, voice cold. The leader snarled, pointing a clawed finger. "Kill him!" A half-dozen Vrakir warriors charged, brandishing spears humming with crackling energy. Kellen threw himself into motion, meeting the first attacker with a swift kick that drove it back. He spun, using the pedestal as a makeshift barrier, then ducked under a spear thrust. Nyra clutched the scepter, unsure if it could be used as a weapon. She lifted it, feeling a faint surge of power respond to her will. Desperate, she focused, imagining a barrier between them and the Vrakir. A shimmering field flickered into existence, momentarily halting an attacker's spear. Shock rippled through Nyra. She had never tapped into such energy before. The moment of triumph was short-lived as another spear bashed the barrier. Shattering it, she staggered, trying to regain her focus. Kellen fought with uncanny reflexes, parrying blows and disarming one Vrakir before delivering a hard elbow to its temple. But they were outnumbered, and the Vrakir fought with fanatical fervor. The leader laughed darkly, watching from the sidelines. "You cannot escape destiny," he hissed. "The god stirs beneath these stones, and your efforts to stop it are futile." Nyra felt a surge of defiance. She raised the scepter again, ignoring the fear clawing at her mind. Images flickered in her consciousness, ancient guardians who once wielded this artifact, sealing away the monstrous entity. She tried to emulate them, channeling the scepter's power with raw determination. A burst of light exploded from the crystal tip, staggering the nearest Vrakir. They hissed in pain, reeling back. Kellen took advantage of the opening, kicking one foe into another, sending them both sprawling. He grabbed a fallen spear, flinging it at a third attacker. The leader cursed, summoning swirling energies of his own. Dark tendrils snaked from his outstretched hands, lashing toward Nyra. She cried out as one wrapped around her arm, a cold, draining sensation robbing her of strength. The scepter dimmed, flickering uncertainly. Kellen lunged, slashing at the tendril with the edge of a stolen spear. Sparks flew, and the dark energy recoiled. Nyra gasped for breath, clutching the scepter to her chest. The surviving Vrakir regrouped, forming a semicircle around them. The leader glowered with contempt. "Your feeble resistance changes nothing," he spat. "The god awakens, and when it does, the galaxy will tremble." Kellen drew closer to Nyra, his voice low. "We need to seal it whatever ritual we need to do. We have to do it now. Otherwise, we're dead." Nyra pressed a trembling hand to her temple, straining to recall the words from her father's archives. The guardian spoke a phrase, in an ancient tongue. It was said to bind the essence of the entity to slumber. She closed her eyes, steadying her breath, and began to chant the archaic syllables. Her voice shook at first, but gained strength as she continued. The Starbreaker scepter glowed brighter, pulsing in harmony with the words. The leader roared in fury. "Stop her!" A swarm of Vrakir charged, determined to silence Nyra. Kellen met them, spinning with lethal precision. Despite his best efforts, one spear lashed across his shoulder, drawing blood. He gritted his teeth, refusing to back down. Nyra's chant intensified, echoing through the chamber, resonating against the ancient walls. The floor trembled, fissures spreading outward from the dais. Strange, glowing symbols ignited beneath the dust, forming a circular pattern around the pedestal. A moaning wind whipped through the chamber, swirling dust in a chaotic dance. The Vrakir hesitated, fear showing in their eyes. The leader snarled, trying to conjure dark tendrils once more. But a golden barrier flared to life around Nyra, repelling his spells. Kellen fought like a demon, wounding or knocking unconscious any who drew near. His shoulder burned, blood staining his sleeve. Still, he refused to yield. The chanting reached a crescendo. With a final resonant syllable, Nyra thrust the scepter skyward. A blinding pillar of light erupted from its crystal, slamming into the chamber's ceiling and radiating outward in a shockwave. The leader screamed as the light washed over him, his body contorting with agony. One by one, the other Vrakir collapsed, overcome by the artifact's power. The swirling darkness receded, banished by the blazing brilliance that filled every corner of the ancient temple. Then, as suddenly as it came, the light faded. The chamber fell silent save for Nyra's ragged breathing. She lowered the scepter, blinking tears from her eyes. The runes etched into the floor glowed softly, stabilized. Kellen staggered to her side, panting. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though exhaustion overwhelmed her. "I think we did it," she breathed. The leader lay crumpled on the floor, his hood torn away, exposing a withered, twisted face etched with pain. His eyes fluttered open, brimming with hatred. "You, meddling fools," he rasped. "You cannot hold back the end. Forever." With a final shudder, he collapsed, falling into unconsciousness. His remaining followers were similarly incapacitated. Kellen gently supported Nyra's weight, helping her remain upright. "The entity's sealed, or at least dormant," he said, gazing around the chamber. "Let's hope it stays that way." Nyra clutched the scepter, feeling its lingering warmth. Without the Vrakir's rituals to awaken it, and with the old guardian seal renewed, the threat should be contained. "The Dominion won't be destroyed by a mad god," Kellen exhaled. Relief mingled with lingering tension. "We should get out of here before more of them show up." Nyra nodded. She leaned on him, every muscle aching. Yet despite the pain, she felt a surge of triumph. She had fulfilled a mission that spanned generations, upholding the duty her family once neglected. Exiting the ruins, they found the sky darkening, a looming storm rolling across the horizon. Lightning flashed above the jagged peaks, illuminating swirling clouds. They retraced their steps across the barren land, returning to the wayward falcon. Riker and Adeline stood by the ramp, alarmed by the ominous weather. "Get inside!" Riker shouted over the wind. "This place is about to tear itself apart." Kellen and Nyra stumbled aboard, the hatch sealing behind them. Adeline caught sight of Kellen's wound, ushering him to a seat where she began rudimentary first aid. "What happened out there?" Riker demanded, fear edging his voice. Nyra managed a weary smile. "We saved the galaxy from an eldritch horror," she said. too exhausted to be witty. Kellen winced as Adeline dabbed antiseptic on his shoulder. Or at least we saved it for the time being. Riker shook his head in disbelief. Whatever, we're getting off this cursed rock. With a roar of engines, the wayward falcon lifted from the plateau, fighting the rising winds. Riker wrestled the controls, shouting curses as turbulence jolted the freighter. The storm clouds flashed overhead. At last, they broke free of the atmosphere, emerging into the calm darkness of space. The battered ship drifted among the stars, away from Mirados and its haunted secrets. Nyra sank against the bulkhead, cradling the Starbreaker scepter in her lap. A profound exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. But within that fatigue, she felt an unshakable sense of accomplishment. Kellen, wincing from his bandaged shoulder, managed to grin. "You did it, Princess," he said softly. She smiled back, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "We did it," she corrected. Riker exhaled, flicking switches on the console. "You people are insane," he muttered, though there was a grudging respect in his tone. "So, do I still get salvage rights? Or what?" Kellen snorted. "Not much salvage to be had, unless you fancy rummaging through old bones and petrified altars." Riker sighed dramatically. "Figures. But at least I'm alive." Nyra looked down at the scepter's faint glow. "This belongs in a safer place," she said, "so its power can't be misused." Kellen nodded. "We can find a secure vault, maybe with the allied worlds or some neutral system. Or you can return to the Dominion and show them what your lineage truly stands for." A flash of uncertainty crossed her face. "I'm still in exile," she murmured. "The Emperor's forces won't welcome me." Kellen placed a gentle hand over hers. "You just saved countless lives, Princess. If they don't welcome you, then the galaxy's more broken than we thought." She met his gaze, a quiet determination rising within her. "Perhaps it's time I stop running. Perhaps I should face them, show them the truth, and fight for the chance at peace. If the Dominion refuses to see reason, at least I won't stand by and let them destroy themselves." Kellen's eyes glinted, a rare hint of pride. "Then I'll stand beside you," he said. A warmth spread through Nyra's chest, banishing the cold weight of fear and exhaustion. She nodded, her voice steady. "We'll do it together." Adeline glanced between them, a faint smile forming. "You two are a strange pair," she observed. "But best of luck to you. The galaxy needs more people willing to stand against the darkness." Riker rolled his eyes, focusing on the nav console, heartwarming. "Now, where to?" Nyra lifted her chin. "Take us to the nearest outpost on the Dominion's border. I have a message to deliver and a future to reclaim." Kellen settled back, allowing himself a rare moment of satisfaction. He looked forward to a chance at rest, even if destiny seemed intent on dragging him into more adventures. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of purpose. The exiled princess, who had once been a stranger, he had risked everything to save her. Now, they were bound by a shared mission to prevent a centuries-old war from consuming the galaxy. And for now, at least, they had won a hard-fought victory in the depths of space as the wayward falcon turned its prow back towards civilization. The Starbreaker scepter pulsed with a quiet radiance, echoing the promise of a new dawn. Outside the viewport, stars glittered like silent witnesses. A new chapter awaited them, one of redemption, unity, and a glimmer of hope that, despite all odds, humanity and its unlikely allies could triumph over horror. As the ship accelerated toward the unknown paths ahead, Nyra and Kellen shared one final look, two weary souls who had found in each other the courage to rewrite fate. Despite everything, A soft, genuine smile curved Nyra's lips. For the first time since her exile, she believed in a better tomorrow. And that, she realized, was the true power of hope, stronger even than the darkest threats lurking in the vastness of space. Epilogue. A happy reckoning. The Dominion border outpost, known as Orion's Watch, loomed against the backdrop of a greenish sun, its armored spires bristling with defense turrets. As the wayward Falcon docked in one of the upper bays, Nyra's heart pounded with anticipation and apprehension. Rekir and Adeline wished them luck, but made no promises about staying if trouble arose. Kellen and NYRA stepped onto the outpost's deck, greeted by a squad of Dominion officers in gleaming uniforms. For an instant, Nyra feared they would be arrested on sight, but one of the officers, an older man with kind eyes, stepped forward. He glanced at the Starbreaker scepter, then back at Nyra's face. "You must be Princess Nyra Viral," he said, voice surprisingly gentle. "We received reports, bizarre ones. Mind you, about a scepter and a sealed horror. Can you verify?" She lifted the artifact, which sparkled under the station lights. "I can," she said, nerves taut. "I come with urgent news and a proposal of peace, for the sake of the Dominion and all free worlds." Kellen stood at her side, silent but resolute. The officer nodded, exchanging glances with his subordinates. Then, to Nyra's astonishment, he bowed a gesture of profound respect. Then, "Your Highness, we welcome you. You will be escorted to the Regent's Council to make your case." Tears pricked her eyes, but she held herself tall. She had dreamed of this moment, and now it was real. As they followed the officers down the station's corridors, Kellen quietly slipped his hand into hers, giving it a gentle squeeze. She returned the squeeze, gratitude flooding her. They had braved horrors and sacrificed much, yet now she had a chance to heal old wounds, to bring unity where once there was division. Later, the halls of the Regent's Council shone with a regal splendor she had nearly forgotten. Ornate columns, banners bearing the Dominion crest, and polished floors that reflected the glow of overhead chandeliers. Advisors and officials whispered, turning in surprise at Nyra's passing. With head held high, she entered the council chamber. Silence fell. The assembled lords and councilors stared, many in shock. Rumors of her supposed treachery collided with the sight of her standing there, the Starbreaker scepter in her grasp. Slowly, Nyra recounted the tale, how she had discovered the ancient threat, how she and Kellen had braved Solara Prime and Marados, how they had sealed the abomination that threatened the galaxy. Some counselors scoffed, but others listened with rapt attention, sensing the sincerity in her voice. When she finished, a hushed tension gripped the room. Finally, an elderly counselor rose, hands trembling on a polished cane. "Nyra Viral," he said quietly. "We exiled your family for reasons many deemed necessary. But now, we see we were blinded by politics and misinformation. You have shown a courage and devotion that surpasses all doubt." Another counselor joined him, bowing respectfully. "For saving countless lives, and for your willingness to stand before us in peace, we offer you forgiveness and welcome you home." Applause spread, tentative at first, then building to a roar. Nyra felt her heart swell. She glanced at Kellen, who watched from the side, his expression caught between relief and bemusement. Amid the clamor, Nyra stepped forward, raising the scepter. "I accept this forgiveness. But let it be known, the fight is not over. The galaxy remains threatened by those who would awaken other horrors, or wage war for selfish gain. I propose we use the Starbreaker scepter not as a weapon of tyranny, but as a symbol of unity, and that we work together to protect all civilized worlds from the Vrakir menace. Cheering erupted, though some remained wary. Nevertheless, in that moment, the seeds of reconciliation took root. Nyra glimpsed a future where her father's legacy might be mended, where she could guide the Dominion down a path that embraced cooperation rather than conquest. By her side, Kellen felt an unexpected stir of pride and a twinge of longing for a quiet life. But as he met Nyra's gaze, he realized he no longer sought only solitude. If he was honest, he wanted to stand with her, to see this new era unfold, and protect it from whatever shadows lurked on the horizon. Days turned into weeks. Rumors spread across the Dominion of the princess's return, of a decisive victory against an ancient evil. Whispers became songs in the taverns and on the streets. Enemies faded into the background, uncertain how to challenge this rising wave of hope. In time, a formal ceremony took place in the Grand Palace, where Nyra was reinstated as a royal figure in the Dominion. Representatives from allied worlds attended, some with skepticism, others with genuine support. And there, in front of thousands, she held aloft the Starbreaker scepter, swearing an oath to protect the peace and unity of the galaxy. When she lowered the scepter, her eyes sought Kellen's in the crowd. He gave a slight nod, lips curving into a rare, genuine smile. She felt her heart thud with recognition for all the trials they had faced. They had found something precious, faith in each other. And so the story, which began on the grimy skybridge of Solera Prime, found its bright denouement in the gleaming halls of the Dominion. The horrors they had battled remained sealed in ancient darkness, the Vrakir scattered and leaderless. But even if new threats arose, Nyra Varel and Kellen Trace would face them together, forging alliances that stretched across star systems, building a future upon the foundation of courage, sacrifice, and boundless hope. In the hush that followed the ceremony, as dignitaries mingled and the crowd roared its approval, Nyra slipped away to a small balcony overlooking the city. Kellen joined her there, leaning casually against the railing. Below, city lights twinkled like a million fireflies in the dusk. Nyra inhaled, cherishing the moment. "I never thought I'd see this day," she said softly. Kellen shrugged, though warmth shone in his eyes. "Guess the galaxy had other plans." She turned, facing him fully. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." He hesitated, then placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You saved the galaxy," he teased. "And all I did was fight a few cultists." She laughed, a sound of pure relief. "You did so much more than that," she said. "You gave me hope when I had none." His smile softened. "Turns out hope's a powerful thing," he said. "Stronger than fear, stronger than ancient gods." They stood there in silence for a moment, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Then Nyra reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. Together, they gazed at the stars overhead. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and perils beyond imagining, but with the Starbreaker scepter safely guarded and a renewed dominion dedicated to protecting life, they faced the future unafraid. Because in that moment, under the starlit sky, they knew the path they walked hand in hand led toward a destiny not of darkness, but of promise and light.